Imagine being 82 years old, kidnapped by fanatical jihadists, and held captive in one of the harshest environments on Earth, the Sahara Desert. For Dr. Ken Elliott, this nightmare became a reality. Abducted by Al-Qaeda-linked militants in 2016, Elliott, an Australian doctor, endured over 7 years of captivity in the barren desert. His story, one of faith, survival, and extraordinary resilience, is both harrowing and inspiring. Dr. Elliott's ordeal sheds light not only on his personal strength, but also on the broader challenges of terrorism in the Sahel region, where Islamist insurgencies have wreaked havoc for years. But despite his harrowing experience, Elliott emerged with an unbroken spirit and an even stronger belief in the power of faith and community. The abduction. Ken Elliott and his wife Jocelyn had spent over 40 years in Burkina Faso, where they founded and ran a hospital in the remote town of Djibo. They treated thousands of patients, many of whom were unable to afford medical care. Their work, which was deeply appreciated by the local community, made them beloved figures in the region. But in January 2016, their lives were turned upside down. On a dark night, 4 militants armed with Kalashnikovs knocked on the Elliott's door during a blackout. The militants were from Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, AQIM, a jihadist group notorious for its brutal tactics and kidnappings. The Elliots had no choice but to comply. They were taken from their home and driven into the wilderness. Soon after, Jocelyn was released, but Ken was held captive for what would become 7 grueling years in the Sahara Desert. The kidnapping of the Elliots wasn't an isolated event. On the same night, AQIM launched a deadly attack in the capital, Ouagadougou. Militants stormed Café Cappuccino, a popular spot for expatriates, and killed 30 people, many of whom were foreigners. The attack, along with the kidnapping of the Elliots, sent shockwaves throughout Burkina Faso and the international community. The life of a desert hostage, Ken Elliott's captivity in the Sahara Desert was marked by extreme isolation and harsh conditions. For most of his time in captivity, Elliott had only one companion, a Romanian hostage named Julian Gurgut, who had been a security guard at a manganese mine in Burkina Faso when he was kidnapped by militants. Gurgut had already spent 9 months in captivity when Ken met him, and the 2 men, despite their 40-year age difference, formed a bond that helped them survive. Elliott's days were monotonous and bleak. The sun scorched the desert during the day, and the temperatures dropped dramatically at night, leaving him freezing with only one blanket for warmth. The relentless sandstorms would often blind him, and his shelter provided little protection from the biting winds and sand. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of his captivity was the scorpions. Elliott was bitten more than 20 times, and the pain from the venom was excruciating. On one occasion, the pain traveled from his right shoulder, across his chest, and down to his left hand, leaving him immobilized for days. With no access to medical care or painkillers, Elliott had no choice but to endure the agony. Despite the relentless suffering, he recounts these moments with a surprising sense of humor, joking, "I believe in the north of Africa, they do have scorpions that can be often fatal, and I think this must have been a pretty close relative of those." Apart from scorpions, the lack of proper food and nutrition posed a serious threat to his health. His diet consisted mainly of boiled macaroni for breakfast, soggy bread soaked in water for lunch, and sticky rice for dinner. There were no fruits or vegetables, and occasionally a piece of meat when a sheep was slaughtered. This limited diet led to malnutrition and eventually scurvy, a disease that caused his legs to swell, leaving him unable to walk for months. It wasn't until one of his captors provided him with vitamin C that his condition began to improve. Enduring isolation and holding on to faith. Despite the physical suffering, Elliott describes the emotional and psychological toll of captivity as the hardest to endure. Isolated from the world, Elliott had no access to books, music, or even basic conversation. His captors, suspicious of any interaction, spoke little and discouraged communication with other hostages. What kept him going during these years of isolation was his deep faith in God. Elliott, a devout Christian, never wavered in his belief that God was with him throughout his ordeal. Even when his captors tried to convert him to Islam, Elliott stood firm in his faith. "The Lord has been good to me. There's no way I was going to dishonor him by converting to Islam, or even pretending to convert," he said in his interview with Foreign Correspondent. When asked if he ever felt abandoned by God during his 7-year captivity, Elliott's answer was clear: never. No, he was always there. His unwavering faith served as a source of strength during the darkest moments of his life. A legacy of service in Burkina Faso. Before the kidnapping, Ken and Jocelyn Elliott had already made a remarkable impact in Burkina Faso. When they arrived in Djibo in 1972, the town lacked even basic medical facilities. The couple took it upon themselves to build a hospital from scratch, with minimal funds, but a lot of determination. Over the years, they operated on thousands of patients, many of whom traveled from neighboring countries like Mali, Niger, and Ivory Coast to seek treatment. The hospital, which relied entirely on donations, was a testament to the power of community and faith. The Elliotts refused to ask for funds directly, instead relying on prayer and support from churches and donors around the world. Their dedication to serving the people of Djibo, regardless of their religion, made them beloved figures in the region. When the people of Djibo learned that the Elliots had been kidnapped, they took to the streets in protest, chanting "Free the Elliots" and "Down with Al-Qaeda." Their support for the Elliots was a reflection of the profound impact the couple had on the community. The release. In May 2023, after more than 7 years in captivity, Ken Elliott was finally released. His release, however, came quietly, without the fanfare or media coverage that typically accompanies such events. The Australian government has maintained that no ransom was paid and no deals were made with the jihadists, though some experts believe a multi-government deal involving the release of Islamist prisoners might have been arranged behind the scenes. For the Elliots, the explanation for Ken's release is simple. It was the power of prayer. "We believe that the only reason why we were released," said Ken, "was because there were a few hundreds, if not thousands of people praying for it, and we believe in prayer." The state of Burkina Faso. While Ken Elliott has returned safely to Australia, the country he left behind has descended further into chaos. Burkina Faso, once a relatively stable nation, has become a hotbed of jihadist activity, with the government losing control of large swaths of the country. Djibo, the town where the Elliots once operated their hospital, is now besieged by militants, and the conflict between jihadist groups, the military and local militias, continues to claim civilian lives. The rise of military juntas in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, combined with the expulsion of French and American forces and the increasing presence of Russian mercenaries, has further destabilized the region. The people of Burkina Faso, who once prayed for the safe return of Dr. Elliott, now find themselves praying for peace in a land torn apart by violence. A story of survival and faith. Ken Elliott's story is one of extraordinary resilience, faith, and a profound commitment to serving others. After enduring 7 years of captivity in one of the harshest environments on Earth, Elliott emerged not only physically intact, but spiritually unbroken. His faith, which sustained him through the scorpions, sandstorms, and scurvy, remains as strong as ever. For the people of Burkina Faso, Ken Elliott will always be remembered as a hero, a man who dedicated his life to helping others, regardless of their religion or background. His legacy of service continues to inspire, even as the country he once called home struggles with its own challenges. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with more captivating content. What are your thoughts on Dr. Elliott's incredible survival story? Let us know in the comments below, and share this story with others to spread the message of hope and resilience.